Hello. Most of this story takes place in Oklahoma. I've had so many strange experiences, most of which I don't even know how to categorize. Anyway, one night I was in bed, asleep. It was just an ordinary night, but this night I fell asleep on my back. It's kind of strange for me to fall asleep on my back. I usually sleep on my side. I woke up in the middle of the night, at about 2:30 or 3:30. As soon as I started to look around, and as my eyes adjusted, I felt a horrible presence in the room with me. I immediately felt goosebumps rush up from the bottom of my legs, up my arms, and to the back of my scalp. I started to cry because I felt like I knew what it meant. I tried to move, but I couldn't. It felt like someone paralyzed my voice box because I couldn't even scream. The only thing I could move were my eyes. So I glanced over to my left, and I saw what looked like a gray alien. But his eyes were completely round and smaller than a typical gray alien, and its skin was bumpier, and it seemed more demonic. It's dark, hollow, inky, black, evil. Empty eyes were rummaging through my mind, going through extremely personal memories, going through my thoughts. It was so intrusive. Later I realized that it accomplished this through the eye contact, if you could even call them eyes. I couldn't look away. I just kept looking into those two horrible pits. It was like looking into two wells in the ground. I tried to scream and yell, "Mom," but nothing came out. It seemed amused by my struggling, and it showed me a slight Mona Lisa smile that slowly grew on its face. It enjoyed seeing me try to move and yell for help. I had never been so scared, helplessly gripped in a horrifying moment. Then darkness. I woke up the next morning, thinking it was all a dream. Course, I didn't know what sleep paralysis was. Later on, I drew a picture of what I saw. I also scoured the internet for any images of something similar to what I saw, and after a week or two, I found it. An image of exactly what I saw and what I drew. This creeped me out a lot because the thing that led me to that image was what I thought was a dream. Also later on that year, my stepdad and my step-siblings were having a small nighttime backyard party. It wasn't anything crazy. Everyone was just sitting around the fire pit, smoking, drinking, and talking. When I wasn't looking at the fire, I looked up to look at my window. I saw that the light was on. This really confused me, because I specifically remember turning it off. I went inside to investigate and looked for my remote control to my ceiling fan. Quick side note, my light switch on my wall didn't work. I had to use a remote to turn on my ceiling fan. While I was inside, I noticed nobody was in the house. Everybody was outside, even the dogs, so I went upstairs to my room. I noticed that my remote control was right where I left it. I turned it off and went downstairs. As soon as I made it outside, where everybody was, I looked up at my window and saw that my light was on again. I immediately thought something was wrong. So I ran back upstairs, and I saw that the light was off. So I left it off and went back downstairs. When I went back outside, I looked up my window one last time and saw that my light was on again. I didn't tell anybody then. I reluctantly walked back into the dead, dark, quiet house. I could feel eyes on me. In my living room, if you look up, you can see a loft with half a wall where you can look over into the living room from the upstairs. It looked pitch black. I felt like someone's watching me from up there. Even though there was a party going on, it felt weird, walking through such a quiet, dark house. I flipped on lights as much as I could. I made it upstairs and was walking to my room. I could see that the light was on, and when I opened the door, my jaw hit the floor of my room. The floor of my room where all of the drawings of the thing that was standing over me were spread out. My room was completely torn up. It looked like there was a tornado in my room, or like my room was a snow globe and someone shook it up. It looked completely different than when I was up there a few minutes ago. Anything that could have been thrown on the ground was. Couch, cushions, blankets, paintings, DVDs, books, and all of my drawings of that awful night. I begrudgingly started to clean up, and while I was cleaning up, I had a weird feeling that I was being watched. I had a feeling someone was in that very room looming over me while I was on my hands and knees picking up the mess. As terrifying as it was, it still felt unfair that I had to pick up this horrible mess that I know I didn't make. And while I was cleaning up, I realized I should go outside and ask if anyone was responsible. I went outside where everyone still was and told them about the mess I discovered and asked if anyone was responsible. All of them looked at me like I was crazy. They told me that Everyone was outside the entire time, and you were the only one in the house. After everyone shrugged it off, it seemed like nobody wanted to hear it. Everybody was already drunk and under the influence, so I just hung out there and slept downstairs, in the living room below the darkness of the loft. Later on, I told my stepdad about the sleep paralysis episode, and I showed him a picture I found of the entity I saw looming over me. Later on, he gave me a painting of the same thing I saw. But the creature or entity in the painting was dressed in a kind of weird ceremonial outfit with a pentagram necklace holding a staff, and it had the same eyes, but with crusty orange pupils. He said, "Hey Luke, here I painted this for you." I thought it was weird. I didn't want to hang it up, it would just remind me of the scariest night of my life. I remembered my stepdad has a weird seance-type room under the stairs. Moreover, he happens to be a 33rd degree Freemason, a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and probably some other secret societies as well. One day I was home and it was the weekend. I would occasionally fall asleep downstairs because I was afraid to sleep in my room. So when I woke up on Saturday, I started walking upstairs to use the bathroom. And while I was halfway up the stairs, I heard what sounded like everybody who lived in the house talking with each other. Upstairs in one of the rooms, the kind of conversation you really want in on. The only thing was, I couldn't tell if they were arguing or joking. I realized that it was coming from my sister's old room. So I walked to the door. I could clearly hear people talking behind it. I wasn't keeping track of what was being said because I was so sure that I could just walk in and ask them what they were on about. But I opened the door and my heart sank, along with 2 tears. There was nobody there. It gave me waves of negative goosebumps. I felt like I had stepped into a web of a demon or something worse. I yelled for my brother. No response. I yelled for my sister. No response. I yelled for my mom. No response. I walked outside. No cars were out there. I walked into the garage. No car. I glanced over toward the door to the seance room that it was under the stairs. I don't like that room. I showed my stepsister the picture of the thing I saw that night when I slept on my back and had sleep paralysis. She said that her boyfriend saw that same thing, intensely watching him from the kitchen window of the house as he was walking through the yard to the front door. A while after that, I was home. It was just me and my brother home. We were both upstairs. I was in my room and he was in his. I was just laying on the small couch in my room when I heard a loud slam in the hallway. I was curious, so I went to investigate what it might be, and I saw a bunch of books on the floor laying on the floor in a S-like shape. They were laying on top of one another like knocked-over dominoes. I looked as the bookshelf where one of the shelf rows had nothing wrong with it, apart from having no books on it and it being dusty. My brother had a look and he took a picture of it for proof. He sent it to me, and I still have the picture. I asked my brother about it and he didn't do it. He would have taken credit for such a prank. I couldn't explain it. There weren't even marks in the dust on the shelf. I had walked past that bookshelf about 5 minutes before, and there was nothing on the floor. It was as if they were levitated off the bookshelf and onto the floor. I've always had strange things happen to me. For example, when I was at my mom's old house and I was young, me and my stepbrother shared a bunk bed. One night I woke up and I was floating in the air, in the middle of the room. When I woke up and realized what was going on, I instantly fell on the toys scattered across the floor, hurting my back. When I got older, I was at my mom's house and I was upstairs in one of the empty rooms when I watched as a cross pushed off the wall and broke. I would hear long, slow scratches on the walls. In those rooms upstairs, I would often come across hundreds of dead ladybugs along the bottom of the windows, including my room. I could never figure out where they came from. I don't remember when this next thing happened, but I remember it was around the same time. I was parked outside my mom and stepdad's house at night with the headlights on. I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye. I followed it with my gaze. It was a shadow too fast to see, and it appeared to dart back and forth across the street and through yards and behind trees. A week later, I was with a friend from school in his car as he was driving down the same neighborhood road. It was night. I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye. I didn't say anything about it because I thought it was my eyes playing tricks. But when he said, "What is that? Do you see that?" I looked up and saw the same shadow darting across the road, through yards, and behind trees too fast to see. We both freaked out as we watched it disappear into the shadows. I still call and text him about it to make sure it really happened and that he really saw it too. Funny this is, he does the same thing. Later on February 25th, 2016, I was home and my mother and stepfather were asleep. I let the dog in the backyard when I noticed it was a little warmer than usual out. Also, it was a pretty clear sky, so I went out back to stargaze. While I was outside, I felt something in the air. Some sort of static buzz. I felt it in my stomach, and it felt like my bones were vibrating. I followed the feeling and looked over the fence to see where it was coming from. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a triangular UFO craft landing on the street in front of my house. I couldn't tell if the craft had legs or not. It had orange, purple, blue, green, red, and white lights on it along the side of the craft. I remember thinking that it was weird nobody on my street was seeing it. I saw a door open on the craft that formed a ramp that touched the street. Baffled and babbling, I went inside, and as I rushed to the kitchen sink, I said to myself, "It's not real, you're just crazy. It's not real, you're just crazy." I washed my face with some cold water and looked out of the window above the kitchen sink. I saw a little girl in an old-school pink dress with blonde hair. I estimated her age at about 5 to 7 years old, and she was holding the hand of a shadow person leaving the craft with her. I couldn't see any details of the silhouette she was holding the hand of or inside the craft due to the bright white light. I thought it was weird how I could see the details of the girl but not the other thing. As I saw this, I heard a little girl's voice say, "Luke, come with me. Daddy, it's so good to see you, Daddy. Don't you want to come with me?" But it was said inside my mind. I went from baffled and babbling to terrified and panicked to the highest degree. I left the kitchen and stumbled into the living room. The voice of the little girl died down. I began wondering if I was having a nightmare. I looked at the time, it was 10:33. I then thought to myself, if I was dreaming, how could I possibly know the time? I felt an approaching presence. I slowly turned around and saw a silhouette of the shadow-type man at the front door. If you could call that thing a man. I could see it through the foggy glass of the front door that still had Valentine's Day decorations on it. It had long, spidery fingers that it deliberately flaunted. As if it knew what I was seeing through the mind, it began to laugh, but not out loud, in my head. As it did, I saw its mouth open and close like when a cartoon character laughs. I was shaking and trembling. I immediately tried to plan a route to my mom's room, but I decided on a shortcut that would lead me through the fireplace to the left of me and into my mom and stepdad's room. I ran to the double-sided fireplace, and as I started crawling on my hands and knees, I heard it tell me, "You won't escape, we've taken you many times before, and there is nothing you can do." I looked at my ash-covered arms as I tried to continue to crawl through the fireplace. I looked into my mom's room. My mother and stepfather were both laying in bed on their backs, but with their heads facing me. Their eyes were screaming. It was like they both were having sleep paralysis. The dark voice said, "They can't help you, they are frozen." Then I heard the buzzing in the air turn into rumbling, and I heard a chant that sounded like the chant of a dead language, "Zimma bu ea itur." The chant was very repetitive, and the same syllables were chanted over and over. As the rumble intensified, a white light was washing over everything. I tried to move, but as it grew stronger, I grew weaker. It became so loud and so bright I was blind and deaf, overloaded from too much light and too much sound. Everything went white. I woke up in what seems like a half-second later, face down and tongue out on my bed, shoes on and fully clothed. My boots were on my pillow, almost as if whoever took me didn't know that it was for my head, so they placed me on my bed backwards and face down. I sat up in shock. I ran into the bathroom to check on myself in the mirror. I opened my mouth and saw that my tongue was cracked, dehydrated, and dry. It was like a dead man's decaying tongue. I could peel pieces of skin off it, it was so dry. I washed my mouth with water until it was hydrated enough for me to talk. I remember sitting there in front of the mirror for a second, thinking about what happened. I remember thinking, how do I explain something like this? I broke down and began crying hysterically. What made it worse was if that little girl was my daughter. Would I ever see her again? Would I ever get to know her? Is she safe? Is she okay? I don't even know her name. How do I find closure in knowing a daughter I never knew I had is out there without me, and with whatever took me? How do I move on from knowing that I'll never get to see her grow up? How do I cope knowing I can't reach her and I can't help her? I practically fell downstairs to tell my mom and stepdad what happened. I knocked on their door and my stepdad answered. I was babbling, shaking, and crying the story out of my mouth. But it made no difference because my stepdad said, "Last night? I don't know what you're talking about." And he closed the door. I sat on the couch in the living room and quietly cried as I questioned my sanity. It was 5:55 a.m. These things that happened eventually put me in a mental hospital. I was struggling to rationalize it all. After I moved and I was on my own, things died down. However, things continue to happen every now and then, even to this day. All of this really happened. Typing this and recalling this has me in tears. I've had odd, unexplained, and supernatural incidences occur my whole life, but when I lived in that house at that time, it was bad. I won't go back. Not to that house. It would just remind me of the worst days of my life. You never know what someone might be going through. Thank you for joining us for this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment for more horror stories from Reddit. Special thanks to Luke, Reddit username 1G4L7, for sharing this chilling tale. Thanks for watching, and remember, every minute is a new mystery.